Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, and going to give you a little bit of what we call the short blast. So it's the first one, I think, so I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of housekeeping. You hear that on the hour-long interview show, but I think the theme of this little short blast is going to be called "Don't Be the Dick in the Movie." And I'm dating myself here. If anybody watches The Blacklist, you know who James Spader is in that show. And now he's like me. He's aerodynamically designed to go directly to heaven. In other words, he's bald. But back in the day, he was always the dick in the movie. Like he always went after Molly Ringwald, or he was the asshole in Less Than Zero, and he always had the pulled up sleeves and the feathered back hair. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, that guy's such a dick. And nobody wants to be that guy. However, we grow up and we get into life, and all of a sudden it seems like a good idea to be the dick in the movie. Excuse me. You know, I think it's always been human nature. We're just designed to overreach, but we've just developed, I think, in the last 25, 30 years, especially since we've got this corporate coup d'etat in slow motion, and they've just made totalitarianism easier and better. But you've got the getting away with it of the CIA, NSA, which is 10 times the size of the CIA. So we're being spied on a regular basis. But we keep doing these things and talking. We see our leaders talking two sides out of their mouth. I just watched a State Department clip on Twitter of the assistant director, whoever the fuck this guy is, scolding the press for not using the right language about the interim president. He's not a fucking interim president. He's an opposition leader, and nobody knows who he is in Venezuela. And he's chastising some guy from AP or Reuters, and basically saying that the term, don't use the totalitarian government's terminology. Like, what, you mean the actual president who got elected 11 months ago? That guy? Yeah, he is the president. And he was going on about, the countries that back this idea. 50 countries out of 190 countries is not even close to a majority. It's not even half. It's 50 out of 190 countries, and they're most of the countries that are our allies, or, we have them in our pocket. Elliot Abrams, who's responsible for this piece of shit coup. Now it's going to be an invasion, by the way. Anybody 2 or 3, 4 months ago who said I was an asshole for bitching about our impending invasion, guess what we're getting ready to do? We're getting ready to invade. And Elliot Abrams is, crowing at the top of his lungs, him and goddamn John Bolton, about how, they're turning back aid. They didn't turn back aid. The Venezuelans did not turn back any aid. They turned back United States aid from U.S. aid, which is a total sham, by the way, and they just cut off aid to the Palestinians for not playing ball, so much for aid. But they did accept aid from international organizations, and especially the Red Cross. Isn't that interesting? So real organizations got aid in. But Elliot Abrams and his Trojan horse bullshit of sneaking weapons into a country to arm the, quote, insurgents is the same shit he pulled in Venezuela. It's the same shit he pulled in Nicaragua with the Contras. In fact, he was pardoned by George Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bush 1 rather, him and Casper Weinberger and 5, 6 other guys. Bush pardoned all of them so as to not be investigated himself for Iran-Contra. And Elliot Abrams is personally responsible for killing 80,000 El Salvadorans in the 80s. And so it's amazing to me that anybody buys this script again without question, just without question. In this century alone, Libya, Syria, Iraq twice, if you really think about it, because we've been there twice this century. And we lost. I don't know if anybody knows, we lost Iraq. We didn't win in Iraq. Iraq will never be the same. It's completely shattered. We destroyed that country. Afghanistan was already not well when we started bombing them in 2001. 18 years we're in there. 18 years. We've lost. It's Vietnam. We have lost. But why is it not covered like Vietnam was? Maybe because the middle-class kids and your neighbors aren't going. So when they pitch this script again about Venezuela, and I see the same fucking people who bitched about Obama, not bitch about this, the hawks who, think Obama was weak in Iraq and he's, the Iran deal was a disaster and Libya was a disaster. And the so-called right wing went after Hillary Clinton for fucking Benghazi. I never saw a single hearing asking, Madam Secretary, whose idea was it to blow the shit out of Libya, overthrow a sitting leader in the richest nation in all of Africa, who had health care, women's rights, and free education? Yeah, was he a dictator? Yeah, he was. He wasn't that great a guy to some people. Obviously, he jailed journalists. He did all the classic dictator shit. But it's not our fucking problem. okay, the whole fomenting of the manufacturing of consent to sit there and say, well, Venezuela, it's the same narrative. Well, he's bad to his people and they have poverty. We've been saying that for 70 fucking years, and we have not won any of those situations. None of them. We have lost and turned countries into absolute shit for 70 years. And now we're doing it again with Venezuela. Manufacturing consent by creating what? Let me pose a question. I'll move on to another point and start wrapping up this short blast. But Colombia is right next door to Venezuela. By the way, Colombia became a NATO nation. Now, those of you that don't remember geography, Colombia is in South America. And what does NATO stand for? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? NATO. Europe. To make sure that we didn't have another World War II. That if one country got attacked, everybody would help each other, right? Okay. Colombia joined NATO. Interesting. I'll get to that in a second. But let me ask you a question. They have 30% poverty rate. Venezuela has a 4% poverty rate. They kill campesinos by the thousands every year. They jail and murder journalists. They rig elections. Wow, sounds like a bunch of human rights violations to me. But we're not invading Colombia. In fact, we're setting up bases in Colombia after they became a NATO nation. There's the punchline. And we can legally do it now because they're a NATO nation. I find it interesting that no one's talking about invading Colombia by that very same metric. Because Colombia already gives us their coffee, etc., for nothing. And we get to enslave their workers for 15 cents a day and no bathroom breaks. Pretty much the deal. That's what we're doing. And that's what Venezuela hasn't been doing for over 20 years. They kicked out the oligarchs and they took over. And I'm sorry, they do have social programs that work for their people. They have a 4% poverty rate. And I live here in Austin, Texas. You want to drive up and down 6th or 7th Street, go to 7th and Red River. You want to see people living under a fucking bridge, eating out of the trash? And we have a country which half the people hate the president. And I don't see anybody invading us. Nancy Pelosi could declare her, she's Speaker of the House. She's third in line to be president if something were to happen. She could declare herself president right now and have China and Russia back that idea and think it's a sensational idea. And how stupid does that sound? Exactly. Because invading Venezuela because we don't like their guy is stupid and none of our business. We're going to help the people by bombing the people. If that makes sense to you, then you're a fucking idiot and you deserve everything this government has to do to you because you're a moron who doesn't question everything. We have 30 million people without healthcare in this country. You know whose fault that is? Not Venezuela's. Okay? We don't have free education. I went to school for free. It was $100 a quarter when I went to Cal Poly Pomona. I graduated in 1987. That school is now $6,000 a quarter. So it's not a pony that I want. We actually had this once upon a time. So what the fuck? Shit, man. And now they just re-jailed Chelsea Manning. They put her in jail because she refused to testify against WikiLeaks in a grand jury hearing. And it's I'm sorry, refusal to testify. She went in and gave the answer she gave before, pleading the Fifth and the Fourth and the First, the Fourth, and the Sixth Amendments, and basically pleading the Fifth. Excuse me. And they jailed her to coerce a confession or dirt on WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. We're now going after publishers. We never used to do that. Remember, if you recall, the Pentagon Papers with Daniel Ellsberg, the Washington Post printed the Pentagon Papers. He stole them. And he got in trouble and he got out of it. But still, the point is the Washington Post did not go to jail for that. And this is when the Washington Post used to actually give a shit about printing the news. The 10 minutes they were worth anything because they've been full-throated in support of every fucking war we've gone into, just like the goddamn New York Times. So, but my point is this. To put Chelsea Manning in jail for doing the right thing and standing up for freedom of the press. You know, Jim Acosta not getting a lunch pass, that's not the press being abused. Okay, because Donald Trump doesn't like Rachel Maddow, or he's got a problem with one of the Fox News anchors who talks shit on him one week, is not an invasion of freedom of the press. That's not news. Pardon me while I take a sip of beer. What's news is somebody who, Julian Assange, by the way, who the so-called left loved when he busted Bush. When W got busted with all that stuff during his administration, the left loved him. Julian Assange had his own TED Talks out of it. Then Obama gets in office and Julian Assange still calls him on war crimes, and Hillary. And all of a sudden, he's no longer the darling of the left. He's fake news. Oh, he abused that woman, which was debunked because the Swedish government even dropped the charges. And the woman even said, nothing happened. It's cool. And what happened? He's still holed up in an Ecuadorian embassy against his health and everything else because we're going to try to lock him up and throw away the key. We have become a totalitarian state. We have become the dick in the movie. And seriously, the way things are going, I wouldn't mind James Spader being president. This stuff makes you uncomfortable. It's supposed to. Sleep tight.